Time has come to sell these Dynasty assets. We're going to be selling them as soon as we possibly can. But let's preface by saying this. We do not hate these players. In fact, pretty much every player on this list, I really, really like. We don't like their price in Dynasty. A lot of people after our sales videos, why do you not like this player? Why do you hate them? Why do you always crap on them?
You're just a hater.
We just don't like their price. And we have to play Dynasty focusing on value and not our individual opinions of players if we want to play successfully. So even though we like these guys, even though we think they're great, even though we will fight for them as NFL players, we do have to see through that and say their Dynasty price isn't super good. Let's start with Jalen Hurts.
Oh,
this one hurts.
Again.
This one hurts. I asked our team, I said, okay, who are the early offseason Dynasty sells? And almost every single one of them said Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts is going to be a tough one to sell to people, I think, because Jalen Hurts really has still been fantasy productive. And that's large in part to the rushing touchdowns that he's been able to supplement his passing volume with. He's had a lot of rushing touchdowns. But when you're looking at fantasy points per game this year in 2023, it's dropped about 2.5 points from last year, but it's still second overall fantasy points per game. He's had 601 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns this year. So that's definitely the upside. I know, man.
15 rushing touchdowns.
I know.
That is freaking tush push.
I know.
Gosh.
But that is definitely the argument for saying that Jalen Hurts deserves to stay where he is. Now, one thing to note, Josh Allen did reestablish himself as the unquestioned Dynasty quarterback too. You're looking at him this year. He is first in points per game and first in PPR points. And he also has 15 rushing touchdowns. He has 500 yards. So he has been just as good on the ground as Jalen Hurts, but he has been slightly more productive through the air. A couple more passing touchdowns and a few hundred more passing yards. So looking at Josh Allen, he's also had a very good year. And the production consistency over the last 4 years through the good and bad performances is just too much to turn down from Josh Allen. So if you're still taking Mahomes at 1, which you probably should take Mahomes at 1 and Josh Allen at 2. I mean, then that's going to at least bump Jalen Hurts down a little bit. Now, it's slightly negligible, but one thing you did notice from Jalen Hurts this year and from the whole Eagles offense, in my opinion, is that they were a lot less fluid, a lot less of a threat, especially vertically without Shane Steichen there. You saw Indianapolis' offense with Gardner Minshew, of all people at quarterback, actually take a step up. And I think Steichen was a huge part of that Eagles offense and the success of that Eagles offense.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you here just with the Jalen Hurts take overall. It's really funny how everything kind of comes full circle where Jalen Hurts, yes, he's been very productive like we expected him to last year, but going into the 2022 season, we were saying sell Jalen Hurts. We didn't think that he was going to increase in value, and then he skyrockets up boards, and he ends up being an unquestioned top 3 Dynasty quarterback, no problem, and we're like, oh, crap, we were just super wrong on that take. Well, now it's actually looking like he could potentially fall in value going into 2024, Steichen being one of them. We've already seen a full year of the Eagles offense without Shane Steichen. And I think that was something or an element that was way, way underrated in just what Shane Steichen has been able to do with a backup quarterback in the Colts offense all season. And then you've got the whole CJ Stroud element. And you've got the quarterback landscape in the NFL as a whole, overall. Like, there have been so many injuries this season and so many elite level quarterbacks that have not been able to finish the season or had very bad years where almost all of them fell in value. Jalen Hurts was basically just the last man standing. He was the last quarterback to stay relatively healthy, even though he's been hurt all year. He's been playing through it. And if you had Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, I would say Kyler Murray, and Lamar Jackson all producing at the level that you would expect from elite level quarterbacks in 2023, I think you're looking at 2024, and Stroud is breathing down Jalen Hurts' neck. I think by the end of 2024, CJ Stroud will have passed him, and that, to me, is a pretty significant teardrop. So all that to say, like, when you're looking at how dependent Jalen Hurts is on rushing touchdowns and how much of a step back he's taken back as a passer since Steichen has left, I'm not saying that he's just going to fall off a cliff and be terrible next year, but I don't think he's going to be as valuable as he has been over the last 18 months.
Yeah, and you look at the efficiency metrics year over year for Jalen Hurts. One thing that does stand out, and an important statistic we like to look at for quarterbacks, adjusted yards per attempt. In 2022, he was 4th in the league in adjusted yards per attempt at 7.8. In 2023, he dropped down to 19th 19th in the league with 6.5 adjusted yards per attempt. And again, you mentioned the last man standing thing. I think that's huge. Now, Jalen Hurts does have a fairly good contract. The potential outcomes after the 2027 season. He did play well enough this year to where his job is not even close to in jeopardy. So I will be honest with you, like if you're looking at keep, trade, cut, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback 5 now. The players to even trade, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, the 101, Burrow.
Here's my question, this is where keep, trade, cut falls short. We have done multiple mock drafts and multiple startup drafts since the season has ended. Have you seen Jalen Hurts go any further than the 104?
No, that's true.
And I don't see that realistically happening because he, like you said, has the contract insulation. That's a great thing about Jalen Hurts in the pro to his current value. My issue is at this point, there's not going to be a single player in the first round come the end of next year that doesn't have massive contract insulation. All of them are getting huge contracts.
So
now.
You're pretty confident that he falls out of the first 4 picks?
Yeah, I think he will. Yeah.
I can't say with certainty that I think he will. I do think that there is a chance that he gets back on track next year, has a little bit more of efficient season from a passing standpoint, and maintains his value. So I don't. It's tough for me actually. I'm kind of on the fence about this one, but I definitely see the arguments I presented and the arguments that you presented as well. So
if you can get Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert plus some in exchange for Jalen Hurts, are you taking that package?
Yes.
So am I.
So I think those are the packages I'm comfortable saying sell Jalen Hurts for. If you're not though, and you're selling Jalen Hurts at anything less than like a top 3-4 QB discount, I don't think I would be like sprinting to sell Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. That's not what a sell is. You're not taking Jalen Hurts and selling him 1-for-1 for any of the quarterbacks that are valued less than him. Like this is capitalizing on Jalen Hurts' current value.
Let us know in the comments what you think about this one. I'm not sure about this one, but I definitely see the pros of moving off of Jalen Hurts this offseason. He's still a great dynasty asset and a great football player. So talk about the next guy on this list, though, and this one kind of makes us sad.
This does make us sad, and this is something that, even though it does make us sad, we were, I think, emotionally prepared for it. When Jordan Addison went to the Minnesota Vikings in the 2023 rookie draft, we were super excited. We said right off the bat, next to Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison was going to be the most productive rookie wide receiver. And we were almost right. It actually ended up being next to Puka Nacua.
Right.
And phenomenal year. I mean, with Kirk Cousins and without Kirk Cousins, alongside Justin Jefferson for half the season as well, he really was great. He was amazing. And I think for the foreseeable future, Jordan Addison is going to be a very, very good NFL wide receiver. We knew that we were going to get to a point where we were going to have to move off of Jordan Addison potentially for the right price because he was going to have a cap ceiling playing alongside Justin Jefferson. So when you look at this season, excluding week 18, because that kind of is like a fantasy irrelevant week, Jordan Addison with Justin Jefferson had 31 receptions for 417 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. Without Justin Jefferson, he actually did the same, relatively the same, 35 receptions, 437 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But the receiving yards per game went up. It was less games.
I was going to say it was 2 less games.
Yeah, he was quite, I mean, that's like 33% more productive than he was. So that's very, very significant. That's very, very notable. I think you're looking at a type of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith pairing with Addison and Justin Jefferson, where both of them can be productive and finish the season very well from a fantasy perspective. But when you're talking about game-to-game reliability, I'm not sure I trust Addison on a week-to-week basis when Justin Jefferson is playing with who we would assume probably Kirk Cousins. Now, he ended up being 11.5 points per game with Justin Jefferson, which would have finished as wide receiver 41 on the season.
Which is not even close to where he's finishing totals.
Right, and he was 2 touchdowns above expected on that stretch. So I see this, and again, these selections are like guys that we've talked about with our team. So we're trying to discuss it and rationalize how they could be sells, but Avery, are you specifically with this sell, or are you behind it?
Yes,
with
I am.
this price?
And I think the main metric that sells me on this one is he is at 11.4 points per game with Justin Jefferson this year. That would be the wide receiver 41 of the season from a points per game perspective. I think with Hawkinson playing now next year, early on, I think we could see some production from Jordan Addison because you're going to have TJ Hawkinson coming back from an ACL. However, when you're looking at some of the value adjacent players for Jordan Addison, he's not far from Jonathan Taylor, and I would take Jonathan Taylor over Jordan Addison. I would probably take Kyron Williams as well. Now, there are some guys around him that I probably wouldn't take over him. I don't know how Zay Flowers is above him now, but I would take Addison over Flowers still. Below Jordan Addison, so you can get these guys plus for Jordan Addison. Devonta Smith, a 2024 mid-first, which you could probably get Rome Odunze there. If Rome Odunze ends up in the right spot, he could be more productive than Jordan Addison. JSN, Tank Dell, Hawkinson, all of those guys, I'm probably taking over Jordan Addison, so I would definitely want to down tier to those guys. Drake London, I would down tier to Drake London plus. So I think it just depends on which price you're getting for Jordan Addison. He has slid down a little bit in the last couple weeks of the season, so I think it makes him less of an urgent sell. I'm not like trying to get rid of him on every single roster. He has indeed slid down a little bit. He was as high as I think the wide receiver 12. He's down to the wide receiver 14.
Here's the nice thing about Jordan Addison, regardless of your opinion on whether you think he's a buy, sell, or a hold. I kind of see a similar career track, at least through his rookie contract, to a very like Brandon Ayuk-esque asset in Dynasty, where Ayuk, I mean, he's 4 years into the NFL, and not only has he maintained his value since his rookie season, he's like exceeded it well above, and he's a borderline top 12 Dynasty wide receiver, depending on who you talk to. And I could see that being something for Jordan Addison, where from a production perspective for the next couple of seasons, he may disappoint based off of what we expect from him. Because, I mean, let's be honest, the Vikings are a pretty solid running back away from replicating the Niners offense to the best of their ability. They've got 2 elite wide receivers. They've got an amazing tight end, and they just lost Dalvin Cook a year ago. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at Addison. Let's be realistic with the ceiling that he can have in that offense, because as good as one of the best offenses is in the NFL, like San Fran, it caps the ceiling of every fantasy asset in that offense except for their best asset in Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. So this one's tough as well. I think I would sell Addison for the right price, but again, it's just going to depend on how your league mates value Jordan Addison, and he's a little bit of an interesting case. I do think his ceiling is capped when Justin Jefferson plays. But Jalen Waddle, let's move on to Jalen Waddle. And this one, I don't know if we'll end up recommending to sell Jalen Waddle by the time we're done with this conversation. But Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 12 last year in points per game. This year, wide receiver 24. A lot of people are hanging on to Jalen Waddle with the promise of Tyreek Hill retiring. We do have to understand that's still a ways away. And it's a long time in dynasty years. It really is. He's still 29th overall and the wide receiver 10 on keep trade cut. Yeah. Now, here's my question.
He's actually finished as a wide receiver 34. He's ranked like he's just fallen a ton in value.
Yeah, he has. He's the wide receiver 11 now.
Yeah.
So Are you getting enough in return for Jalen Waddle for him to be a sell, for this to merit a sell? This
is the biggest. We had a big, lengthy off-camera discussion with our team here about Waddle, because I think it was pretty divided. And my big case for potentially not selling Jalen Waddle and just holding on to him, worst case, like avoiding him, is, what are you really getting in return for him? Are you really going to get a top 10 dynasty wide receiver in exchange for Jalen Waddle, or can you buy him at a discount? The other risk to Jalen Waddle is that there's a chance he continues to fall in value this offseason. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that a trade calculator like Keep Trade Cut is necessarily caught up with the way that people are actually valuing him realistically. Now, if you can get, because Ryan Bread, shout out,
Ryan Bread,
Mr. Bread, he did trade away Jalen Waddle and he got Chris Olave.
See, I would do that.
Now, but again, even then,
it's kind of a lateral
they're kind
move.
of in the same tier.
It's kind of a
really
lateral
are.
move.
It's kind of personal preference at that point, because Waddle's in the better offense, and Olave has been just as disappointing. Not just as disappointing. He's been relatively disappointing this year.
If I'm looking at the wide receivers on Keep Trade Cut behind Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith, JSN, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman.
All of those guys have just as cap ceilings as Waddle
I think I'm taking Waddle over those
Yeah.
guys. Mm-hmm. And looking at the guys ahead of him, Brandon Ayuk, I would probably take Waddle over Ayuk. Olave, Tyreek Hill, Puka, Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown. Okay, all of those guys I take over Waddle. So if you're getting those guys, maybe I'm moving off of Waddle. But I don't know. The biggest stat here that I think that you pointed out that I love and that I think makes the biggest case for him actually not being a sell is the Miami running backs had 33 touchdowns combined this year. 33.
That's so ridiculous.
That is not happening next year.
No.
Like, there's no question that's not happening. So, we talk about touchdowns being super duper volatile, and, there was some volatility in general with Waddle. Now, his
touchdowns this year were cut in half compared to what he did in 2022. Guys, we are 1 year removed from Jalen Waddle producing as a wide receiver one alongside Tyreek Hill. And yes, I know there are elements to that. Yes, I know that Mike McDaniel did not really elevate the run game like he has in 2023. Yes, Jalen Waddle's yards per reception way higher than they were this year. He honestly, he met in the middle compared to what he did in 2021 versus 2022. He's right in between those 2 years in terms of yards per reception. And I think that's a reasonable metric. I think that's where Jalen Waddle is probably going to sit for the next couple of years. The other argument is Tyreek Hill. Why are we now just realizing that Tyreek Hill is playing alongside Jalen Waddle? It's taken us 2 years for that to finally click. He's always been there.
Jalen Waddle was a sell when he was the wide receiver 4 or 5 on Keep Trade Cup last offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think I don't know. I mean, we didn't roster Jalen Waddle at that price, but I think we just kind of missed that as a community. And again, I do think one thing that you could say for Jalen Waddle is that he really has struggled to stay healthy this year. Really, really struggled. You've seen him come out of multiple. It seems like every game he's going into the tent. And he's also missed some games this year. He's missed week 17 and week 18 and week 3. So, missed 3 games this year. I mean, looking at the games where he had touchdowns this year, 28 points, 25 points, 18 points, 14 points. In the games where he has not had a touchdown, he's not gone over 20. So I do see it.
I see it.
I see the cap ceiling.
Yep.
But again, there are the list of guys that I'm selling Jalen Waddle for, all of them are listed above Jalen Waddle by a fair amount. Olave, Hill, Nakua, Wilson. I mean, I don't think anybody's doing that. So I guess if you're getting that, sell Jalen Waddle. But other than that, I think we agree. I'm not dying to sell him.
No. If anything, just from the concerns alone about Waddle, I'd say at his price, maybe just avoid him in startup drafts. But you're not going to be able to sell him for enough that I'm super excited about getting rid of him either.
Yeah. All right. The next guy, though, I would sell for Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, so speaking of Brandon Ayuk, because we mentioned him earlier, it is almost scary how similar this season has been to 2022 Jalen Waddle for Brandon Ayuk. Let's look at a couple efficiency metrics here. Brandon Ayuk is currently wide receiver 11 on Keep Trade Cut, a top 12 dynasty wide receiver. Okay, this is the golden age of wide receivers, and Brandon Ayuk is cracking the top 12. He's never had a wide receiver 1 season in his 4 years, so that's knock number 1. Is that his fault? Not necessarily. He's playing in an offense that's way loaded at every position. It's kind of not fair. And he's entering his 5th year with San Francisco. Yeah, there's a chance he gets traded to a better team. I would hope that he goes to a bit different situation because I think he has wide receiver 1 capabilities. That said, he was 37th this year in total route wins. Mm-hmm. For a guy that is hallowed for his amazing route running ability, he ends up 37th in route wins. 26 in route win rate. He's only winning half of the routes that he runs. Target separation, he's 28th. Michael Pittman, total opposite. A guy that we really like, we think is very safe all the time because he's so good at winning, at getting separation
and winning routes and getting targets.
Getting targets. Yeah. Yards per target and yards per reception this year. Brandon Ayuk ranked 1st in the league. Oh, and by the way, in 2022, Jalen Waddle also ranked 1st in both of those metrics.
Both of them.
Guess what happened to Jalen Waddle the second season after that year? In 2023, he took a massive step back because he came back to reality. Yeah. To me, that screams a not sustainable metric. Brandon Ayuk on the year has only had 100 targets, over 100 targets, barely. It's 29th in the NFL, 18th in target share, 24th in target rate. He's a big play guy. And that's the nice thing of playing in an explosive, awesome offense like San Francisco. I don't think he's going to be in San Francisco for a very long time, but there's a chance he stays there next year, and there's a chance that you can get him at a better price later. So I don't love the price for Ayuk now. I liked his price 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Not as much now.
And looking at Ayuk some more of the efficiency. Now, one thing he does have going for him, he's second in yards per route run.
Yes.
3.18.
Yeah.
So he's been very efficient.
Yeah.
He's, again, you mentioned first in yards per target, first in yards per reception, second in yards per team pass attempt, another very telling metric.
Yeah.
It's not like Brandon Ayuk hasn't been good.
Right.
Brandon Ayuk is good. But again,
for me, it's about the players going around him. Like, I'm going to give you a list of players.
That's what I want to know.
And I want to ask you, who do you prefer? Kyler or Ayuk?
Kyler, easy.
TJ Hawkinson or Ayuk?
Hawkinson.
Purdy or Ayuk?
Purdy.
Dak.
Waddle.
Olave. Tyreek Hill.
Hill.
Okay. Ayuk is a screaming sell.
I'm taking all those guys. Again, I like Brandon Ayuk, and he's plenty of good wide receiver. But if I'm taking all the guys around him, then I think I'm comfortable moving off of him.
Yeah, I think that means he's a sell.
So, yeah, Ayuk is another guy that I think is interesting. And, again, it's all about his price. Let's go to George Pickens now. George Pickens is one I can definitely get behind, and I can confidently tell you
there's not even much you have to say about this, honestly. Like, he's valued around Saquon Barkley, Jaden Reed, and Jared Goff in the sixth round. The sixth round of Dynasty startups right now is where he's ranked.
He's valued ahead of Stephon Diggs right now, which Stephon Diggs has been bad. I know Stephon Diggs has not been good, but
the Bills haven't been good.
George Pickens this year has scored over 10 points without scoring a touchdown 3 times. 10 points. You're talking 10 points. That's like flexible level. He's had more than 7 targets in a game this year 3 times. He is value equivalent, and this is where the sell part comes in. And again, now it would be one thing. George Pickens is not really a player that I like watching his physical ability and talent, but not someone that I say, yeah, he's definitely my favorite player. He's not. You can sell him right now for a late 24 first, and my friends, I can confidently tell you that you are going to get somebody much better than George Pickens in the late first of the 2024 draft. I promise you. I can guarantee you, not to mention you're moving off to a much more value-insulated asset, an asset that's going to increase in value, an asset that gives you much more flexibility, an asset that doesn't have Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky throwing him the ball. Unless it's a Steelers receiver, I guess.
I don't know what it is with Pickens. Like he's just one of those dynasty assets that the dynasty community just has a love affair with, and they have since before he was drafted. Like, he's just a guy that, again, the nice positive with Pickens is he'll probably maintain his value for a while, or at least not plummet in value over the next couple of years because people are just obsessed with him for, honestly, I don't really know what reason, because he has cool highlight reels. But let's be realistic. The chance of that 24 first increasing in value over the next couple of years, I think, is higher than George Pickens because we know he has a cap ceiling.
And you're going to get somebody, you're going to get a receiver with better draft capital there probably.
Yeah, he's not a true wide receiver one.
No, he's absolutely not. So, yeah, I think at that price, you have to sell George Pickens and try to get a late 24 first.
You were getting Jordan Addison in the late first last year,
you were.
Just so you know.
And Quentin Johnston. All right, talk about Njoku last year. The biggest 30-day riser, by the way, on Keep Trade Cut.
Wow,
David
good for
Njoku.
him. Yeah. I think it's very well earned for David Njoku, and I've got my own opinion on David Njoku. Since the bye week, in week 5, Njoku has had 4, 9, 8, 6, 9, 15, 9, 6, 8, 14, 9, and 8 targets.
I threw a nice in there.
That is TJ Hawkinson with Joe Flacco. Like, talk about the most unprecedented year for a tight end that, again, has been a dynasty darling for 7 years now, has finally broken out as a 27-year-old. Now, is that a knock on him? No, not necessarily, because the tight end landscape is so bare. I think the biggest discussion here is, do you think that the gap between David Njoku and Trey McBride is so significant that you would take, like, Trey McBride over Njoku plus a lot, and they're pretty much value equivalent at this point? Then I think you could say that David Njoku is a sell. But if you're looking at McBride's production this year in an offense that is going to have a ton of turnover this offseason, like, I think it's fair that Njoku and McBride are going around the same price. This is something that could fluctuate in the offseason because people like the younger guys in Dynasty. But I personally am okay with David Njoku's price. I think he's earned it. I'm avoiding him, but I do have like a share or two of him in my Dynasty leagues, and I'm not necessarily selling him. Do you get the distinction there? Like,
yes.
I'm not running to go get any more shares of David Njoku, but the ones that I have of him right now, I'm comfortable with. That's just my personal opinion, because we always talk about targets. He has 123 targets on the year. that's safety in my opinion.
All right. So let's talk about David Njoku. I'll start with this question because I hold the opposite opinion on Njoku. Who's going to be the quarterback next year for the Browns?
I think people assume Deshaun. If they go on a run with Flacco, I think it gets real hairy.
I think it would too. I doubt they do. I think even if they did, though, I think they have to go Deshaun with the contract. So
and if that's
I think it's most likely to be Deshaun.
Right. And if that's the case, Deshaun didn't go down until I think week. You could correct me if I'm wrong.
He played
I think he went down week 10.
Yeah, he played.
It was the Baltimore game.
Yes.
He went down week 10. So Njoku had 7, 4, 9, 8, 6, and 9 targets before Deshaun Watson went down. So when Deshaun Watson was playing, he still was effective.
They didn't play together all of those games. So here are the targets with Deshaun Watson playing at quarterback this season: 3 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, and 9 targets. He got past 50 yards in those games one time.
Oh, because he was out during a little bit of that stretch, wasn't he?
Yeah, he got past 50 yards in those games one time, and he only had 1 touchdown over those 5 games. If you go back to 2022. David Njoku targets with Deshaun Watson, 9, 6, 5, 3, and 5. He had 1 game over 50 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. His highest yardage total in the first 10 games with Deshaun Watson is 59 yards, and he's averaged 5 targets per game. So, and Kyle did some of that research for me. Maybe they found something with Njoku to where he'll be targeted more now. But
he's an easier target than Amari. Amari was really unlocked by Joe Flacco. And
so was Njoku.
But so is Njoku. Yeah, you're correct. But if you were to pick between the two who would actually maintain their value, I'd probably say the guy that has less yards per target and yards per reception.
Maybe.
And gets more consistent targets.
If Deshaun Watson is the quarterback next year in Cleveland, I don't think I can safely say that I think that's going to maintain the target volume. Because we've seen, we have a 2-year sample size. And yes, it's only, I think, 10 games. But again, the 10 games, like I said, the highest total yardage, 59 yards, and he's averaging 5 targets a game, which is a pretty stark difference from like the TJ Hawkinson-esque, like 8 to 10 targets per game he's getting with Joe Flacco. Now, when I'm looking at David Njoku's price, like I'm curious, are you taking David Njoku or George Kittle?
So when I'm looking at George Kittle versus David Njoku, I'm looking at who did I trust more down the stretch between those 2 tight ends this year, and that was by far and away David Njoku. Now again, your argument is the difference between Joe Flacco producing for Njoku versus Deshaun Watson, and I think that's reasonable. But again, how much am I trusting Kittle from here on out? As I mean, he's a guy that is, as much as we like him, he does get banged up. He is very inconsistent and has been for years and years and years. This is what we love. Like, we always talk about target volume, and this is like what we know can transcend any sort of quarterback play. And maybe it was just Njoku finally getting his groove. Like,
that's possible. If we had seen this target volume with Deshaun Watson, I would agree with you. But I cannot get past we haven't seen this with Deshaun. But I'm looking, are you taking Josh Downs or Njoku in Dynasty?
Josh Downs, just because he's a wide receiver.
Are you taking an early 2024 second or Njoku?
I think it's close just because of how much the Dynasty community loves David Njoku.
I would take the second there.
Would you?
Yeah. If it's an early second, yeah. Like it's 201 to 203. I would take that over.
Yeah,
Njoku.
I mean that's.
Are you taking Travis Kelce or David Njoku?
Oh man. I'd probably go Kelce.
Yeah, I would go Kelce too. It's not like a landslide, but I'd go.
Right.
Are you going Godwin or Njoku?
Probably Njoku.
Oof. Are you going who else? Christian Kirk or Njoku?
Well, Christian Kirk, he's on his last year in Jacksonville, isn't he?
Is it his last year? Because he's been there 2 years. Was it a 3-year?
Yeah,
he was a
3-year contract. Yeah. I'm kind of scared of that situation. I might give the edge to Njoku.
Are you taking?
I think Njoku will maintain his value.
So then the other part of this is I can down tier and get Evan Ingram.
So again,
a lot later,
right? But that's a down tier. Like to me, the fact that it's even like a very close conversation between all the surrounding guys, at least for me, that we were talking about. I don't know if it is for you.
Those guys were all well below David Njoku.
Well below.
But you were split on those. I'm taking all of those guys over David Njoku. So you were definitely more okay with his price than I am. But I would take all those guys over Njoku.
If David Njoku over the offseason moves up like a full round, which we've seen before, and that's absolutely possible, then I'd probably look to sell him.
The other part of it is I think there are better tight ends at price than David Njoku. So it's less about me selling because of where his overall price is and more about me selling because I know of the value I can get in a trade when I'm trading Njoku for somebody that's valued less, like Kittle, who's valued a round or two lower than Njoku, or Ingram, who's valued like 4 rounds lower than Njoku, which Evan Ingram, I think, is criminally underrated. But all right, long video, But we had some good discussion. Let us know what you think and which ones you agree with and disagree with in the comments. If you play Dynasty, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you drop a like on this video as well. And make sure you head over to flockfantasy.com/domain. When you do that, you will get a team blueprint. When you sign up for the Mother Flocker tier, when you use code domain, Team Blueprint is going to help you have a comprehensive plan for your Dynasty team, multi-years, all around your roster. We're going to try to balance your roster, give you the tips to build a dynasty and win multiple years. And then you're going to have one-on-one coaching and personalized advice with the blueprint after we send you the blueprint. So sign up for flockfantasy.com/domain, use code domain, and choose the Mother Flocker tier to receive your blueprint today. Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you later.